I hope you have unlimited text messaging. By Ms. Garr. Chapter 123. In-person conversation. 8. Maybe we should have handled this in writing. Steve heard knocking at the door of Sam's suite 5 minutes after his last exchange with Tony. Or rather was Sam, because he knows that last message was from his friend. He totally expected his boyfriend to come to him instead of talking to Sam, but he at least wanted the two to try to clear the air. He was starting to feel like something big was coming, and they needed to be together on this. Tony, I'm going to kiss you twice, and then I'm sending you back to Sam to talk. You're the one who wants the Avengers on speaking terms when the aliens invade again, so you're going to have to make some effort. The Avengers are more than just me, Steve said as he opened the door, only to find the last person he expected to see there.
That's sweet. Don't worry, they are talking,
Natasha said as she walked into the room and shut the door behind her. Natasha? He asked, still not believing she was really there. He hadn't seen her since Germany.
It's the hair. The blonde thing is a little hard to get used to. Although I guess one of us needs to be a blonde since you've graduated to Auburn,
she joked. I like it, Steve told her as he goes to sit down on the couch. This room felt like an apartment that was twice as big as what they had in Johannesburg. Then again, there was a big conference and most of the rooms were booked. This was different.
And Stark is very partial to your new look. I had to listen to him talk about the joys of beard friction on the flight here. That might be why Happy was so cranky.
Steve groaned at her words. I don't even want to know.
But you're planning on experiencing it firsthand momentarily. Speaking of experience, you dated Melinda May, and you never told me,
Natasha asked. Yes, for a couple of months. Then she got reassigned and we were running missions. But we still kept in contact until she started dating someone else. Then conversation started to taper off. All communication stopped when S.H.I.E.L.D. fell until a couple of months ago when, thanks to Tony, we started speaking to each other again. Also, turns out the boyfriend after me ended up being Hydra.
Is he dead now?
Natasha asked with an angry look in her eyes. Yes, Coulson killed him, Steve answered.
I'm not surprised. Why are they not together yet? There was a betting pool going at S.H.I.E.L.D. on when those two idiots would get together before he died.
New S.H.I.E.L.D. has a pool, too, apparently, Steve tells her.
I'm not surprised.
I have no idea why they are not together. I think the only reason why we ended up together is because she thought he was dead, Steve tells her honestly.
Nice to know Nick was cruel to everyone, even her. She was a mess, wasn't she?
Natasha asked. Yes. Although, you're going to have to ask her for the details. You are not here to talk about my relationship with Melinda.
No, we're here to talk about your relationship with Stark. Although it's nice to know that you've actually dated someone else in the century, it makes me a little less concerned,
Natasha tells him. And I appreciate the concern, but I'm an adult, and I can make my own choices.
Some of which have been bad.
Like sleeping with the married and in-the-closet chief of staff of the late Senator Ward. That mistake almost got Tony killed.
What?
It's a long story. I also regret assuming that Tony was just going along with things for his own selfish interests and for not trying to see things from his perspective. I realized that things were a lot more complicated than I wanted to see at the time, Steve tells her.
It's hard for you to deal with a world that's not black and white,
Natasha asked. The world was never black and white, not even in the 40s.
I'm glad you realize that.
However, I'm used to problems that have solutions, and I don't think there is an easy one for this.
Not yet,
Natasha told him. So, why are you here?
Well, you keep getting hurt trying to save the world, and your boyfriend doesn't like that. Also, with Wanda leaving to start a new life with Vision, and Clint back with his kids, I heard you need a third for your Secret Avengers.
We do. Same as my best. One of my best friends, but I don't think we should be alone all the time.
Understandable, Natasha replied.
How is Clint? Did you get to see him? Tony's more likely to give me an update on Laura and the kids.
Yesterday before we left. He is okay, just trying to work things out with Laura. Clint is still not happy that Laura joined S.H.I.E.L.D. to get him a full pardon. At least Scott had to make a deal with the FBI, and he's on house arrest for the next 2 years because of it.
You'll do a lot to be with the ones you love, he tells her.
The kids are worth it. I got to make pizza with the kids before we drove out to the private jet. There was a lot of crying.
Your tears or theirs? Steve asked.
Both.
You could have stayed and got the same deal that Clint did.
Laura was the one who made the arrangement. She's the one who is S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Clint is retiring, but now that it's actually an agency again, he's going to get a pension.
He was at S.H.I.E.L.D. long enough to have a pension? Steve asked, surprised.
If you add in the post-implosion Avenger time, yes. Thankfully, they are counting it.
Are they still arguing? You mentioned that he's not happy with our choices earlier. Tony had said similar.
They're coming to terms. Clint doesn't like her being an agent. However, I pointed out that this was payback for everything he put her through during the marriage. I think he's starting to get that. Besides, she's not really a field agent, just a handler for gifted children, so it's not that different from her old job. He's getting attached to Miles due to the fact the little boy is friends with Lila now.
Natasha explains. Is he the 6-year-old with spider powers that Tony refers to as Spidey Jr.? Steve asked.
Yes, and he's adorable, even when he's crawling on the walls.
I never thought I would hear you talk about kids like this.
I like kids. I just can't have any because of bad choices made in the past.
Tony feels the same way. He loves kids, but can't have any without at least a sperm donor because of the palladium poisoning.
My situation is different. I was more active in my bad choice, but it doesn't matter now.
Natasha tells him with a sad smile.
Anyway, we need to talk about what happened in Germany and Siberia.
I'd rather just hug you, Steve said, putting an arm around her. We made a lot of bad choices without all the information, and we can't change what we did, but we can move forward. We can learn to actually talk to one another instead of just assuming the worst.
Okay. Therapy has been good for you.
Yes.
What I really need to know is, do you really love Tony Stark?
Yes, Steve answered emphatically.
The real person, not the act that he puts on for everyone. And by this point, I realize that 90% of his behavior is a performance.
Yes, completely and unconditionally,
Steve answered, firmly, again. Okay, let's go find your boyfriend. He needs to talk to you with both me and Sam present. I'd rather get the heavy conversations out of the way early in the process, especially because Stark's favorite coping mechanism is not telling people what's going on.
Actually, his favorite coping mechanism is... Steve started to say sex but caught himself, but probably not soon enough because Natasha was smirking.
I'm sure you have plenty of that already planned this weekend.
Natasha smirked at him. What will be the subject of this heavy conversation I need to have with Tony? Steve asked, changing the subject.
When Princess Shuri met with Tony a few days ago, she gave him a status update on your best friend. It was too sensitive to pass the information to you electronically.
He can understand that, but Steve knows Tony enough to know that Tony would be fearful of telling him for other reasons. It's bad, isn't it? One of those other reasons is Tony hates giving bad news.
Not bad, maybe just not something you want to hear, and Tony wanted to make sure you have emotional support.
This explains why Tony was somewhat okay with Sam coming along. That makes sense. Tony is like that. Let's just go find him and get it over with. I want to know whatever he's afraid to tell me. Please let Bucky be treatable. Please let Bucky be treatable. Please let Bucky be treatable. He kept repeating those words in his head as they walked over to Tony until he ran into Happy and the agents bringing the luggage up to the rooms quite literally. Happy. Mr. Hogan was not happy to see him at all. He may have been called a few expletives and accused of being a homewrecker, of all things. I thought Potts broke up with him months before it went public, he heard Davis whisper to Piper in the background. That's true, Steve answered. They would have eventually got back together if it wasn't for him, Happy accused, and considering that Tony was in such a bad place when they started talking to one another, he could see a romantic reconciliation happening just because Tony was so lonely. And broken up again in under 2 years, Davis mumbled behind him. Steve wonders if he is completely unaware of his enhanced hearing abilities. But I am here, and we are together. I'm not leaving. I know you're upset that I'm with Tony now, but I love him, and more importantly, he loves me.
I'm not going to leave him just because you want him to get back together with his ex-girlfriend for reasons I don't even understand. All the problems they had before are still there. Did you ever stop to think that's not something Tony wants? That it is probably not even something Miss Butts wants? Steve defended himself. But they could work it out if he wasn't with you, Happy responded. I'm not letting him go. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I am more stubborn than a mule, Steve said pointedly. Steve has been in enough fights to know when he's about to be punched. Happy just had that look in his eyes. Steve was going to let him get in one shot before incapacitating him. However, that's when Agent Piper pulled out an icer.
You two are not going to have a pissing contest in the middle of a 5-star hotel in a foreign country.
Go to your rooms and calm down before I knock both of you out, Agent Piper threatened. I don't need to cool down, Happy retorted.
You want to fight? Fine, Natasha said, grabbing Happy's arms. But you are not having this fight right now in an unsecure hallway that hasn't even been swept for bugs yet,
Natasha said as she actually dragged him away.
You're not going to arrest me?
Steve asked as he led them back to Sam's room, but Davis only replied with a laugh. Moments after that, the agents then pulled out a device that scanned the room most likely for bugs. Okay, it's clean, and no, we're not here to arrest you. The boss just wants to talk to you. Mr. Hogan was supposed to be part of the conversation, but he's not ready, Agent Davis explains. He still hates me. He was nicer to you than he was to Mr. Stark on the right here, Piper added. So he did try to get Tony to dump me for Pepper? Steve asked. If you consider pointing out all your bad qualities repeatedly throughout the flight, that yes, Piper explained. Oh, God! Steve groaned as he sat down on the couch. I think that's why Stark got out of the car so quickly, Agent Davis said as he placed a small box on the counter. I'm going to set up the connection to the director, Davis told his partner. Can I speak to Tony while you're setting that up? Steve really wanted to know what was going on with Bucky. Not yet, Pepper replied. It only takes a minute to set up a secure connection now. The military is not going to come through that door to pick me up. Steve was only half joking. Maybe that was the plan. He really didn't know these two agents that well, although they were on Melinda's team, so he was inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt. No, although General Talbot would like you to sign some of the reprint Captain America cards for his son George for his birthday. By the way, he blames you for his son choosing the Army over the Air Force, Agent Piper said, just as Davis pulled up a holographic image of Director Rhodes. Personally, I would prefer that he would not need to choose either. I always hoped by 2016 we wouldn't be fighting wars anymore, but here we are, the director said from in front of him. At least we're no longer fighting each other at the moment. Tony called it the Avengers' uncivil toddler squabble. He hears Piper try not to laugh behind him, but she's not doing well. Appropriate. Is this where you tried to talk me out of dating Tony because that's not going to work? I already just came out of one of those conversations. I'm sure you're aware of how stubborn I can really be, so you must realize I'm not going anywhere, he tells the director firmly. It's been well documented in your files. Sometimes I'm surprised you survived the Army without getting court-martialed for insubordination, the director remarked. Everybody is. I know it was a long road to get here, but I'm not letting go of Tony. I really do care about him. Good, and I'm going to try to make it as easy on you as possible, the director said with half a smirk. Which is why your agents are not arresting me? Steve asked. Well, Tony would just be mad at me, despite the fact that would mean you would be in the same country as him, and he could have conjugal visits, the director joked. He thinks. Point. Although keeping you out there is not the only reason why I'm not arresting you. Because S.H.I.E.L.D. is a federal agency again, there's some things we can't do that you can. I really don't take orders from S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, even if you're in charge now. He doesn't want to go back to before the fall. There have been a lot of reports of Nomad hunting down terrorist cells and similar organizations that hurt little children. That's what I need you to help me with. I'm sure Tony told you what happened to Kamala of Jersey City. Tony calls her Miss Marvel. Quake saved her family from the watchdogs, and then they had to be relocated. Steve tells him, and they've been relocated again to the upstate facility. Tony did not mention that, because he takes the safety of his kids very seriously,
It's also something that has happened after South Africa, which was the last time he could speak to you in person. They had to be moved again after their last safe house was attacked by the watchdogs again. What do you need me to do? We know who is responsible for funding the watchdogs, but because he is a highly successful Russian businessman, we can't touch him, the director explains. So you need my help? Yes. Who is he? Anton Ivanov. We've already been tracking him down. Good. We are on the same page.
That's when Steve heard a knock at the door. It's your boyfriend, Agent Piper said after looking through the peephole.
Let him in, and please try to keep him from causing an international incident, the director said before flickering out. I make no promises,
Steve responded, and seconds later Tony was completely wrapped around him with his mouth ending up on end. Everything else fell away.